do have skills that make me a nightmare for people like you.
I would now like to call the first witness for this morning, Robert Martin.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. He's like the Mount Albert Rugby League. Lovely. Mr. Martin, once you are comfortable, I need to undertake the procedure required by the Inquiries Act 2013 to have you say, in answer to my question, do you solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm that the evidence you'll give before this Commission will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Ms. Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. I would actually just ask for the Registrar to please place this binder with Robert's brief of evidence before him. Robert, if you have a pen in front of you, would you be able to sign, that's the last page of your brief of evidence, if you could sign that, confirming that is your statement with today's date. Thank you. Thank you. Now, just by way of introduction, Robert, I'd just like to confirm that you are an independent expert member of the United Nations Committee for the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities?
Yes, I am.
And you are a disability rights activist?
Yes, I am.
You have promoted the self-advocacy movement internationally?
Yes, I have.
And has John McRae written a biography about your life called Becoming a Person?
Yes, he has.
Do you have that book in front of you today?
Yes, I do.
Would you like to hold that book up, and I'd ask for that to be presented to the Commissioners today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Robert, do you have your statement in front of you?
Yes, I do.
And you have come to the Commission today to tell us your story?
Yes, I have.
Would you like to read that statement, starting at paragraph 1?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
My name is Robert Martin. First, I am a person with a powerful story to tell. Second, I'm a person with a learning disability. People first, disability second. Today I'm going to share my story with the Royal Commission of Inquiry. I hope that all New Zealanders will listen. It is time to challenge New Zealanders. The phase out of sight, out of mind is no longer acceptable. I'm going to talk to you about my life in institutions foster homes, care services, and I'm in your sight today, and I hope my story will remain within your mind. The early years of my life. I was born in 1957. A doctor damaged my brain during birth with the use of forceps. Just because I was born with a disability, I was being punished for being who I was. Kimberly.
Sorry, if I could just pause you there, Robert.
Yeah, sorry.
We're up to paragraph 4.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that. A doctor told my mother that I was mentally retarded. He told her that there are places where there are other people know how to look after people like me. He told my mother to send me away and forget about me. So at 18 months old I was sent away to an institution called Kimberley. I was put away in an institution. I was locked away from the community. I wanted to be with my family. I wanted to go out with my sister. I missed my family. I cried for them. I wanted them to come and take me home, but they did not come. So in the end, I gave up crying for them. As a toddler in Kimberley, I was fed and changed and taken care of. But I do not remember being picked up, loved or cuddled, because there were so many of us, and we were just a number. I didn't experience what other kids did. I didn't go to birthday parties, feed the ducks, or visit the zoo. We were locked away from the community. It was lonely. There were hundreds of people around me, but as a little boy I didn't know another human being, but not properly anyway. When I was 7, I was returned to my family. Things did not work out so well at home. I was told I was mentally handicapped. I was dumb, thick as a plank of wood, and will always need other people to do things for me. That hurt, because I really wanted to be like other kids. I was sent to a school. It was hard. I would leave my classroom and knock on the window of my sister's classroom, calling out to her, "Come and play with me." I would be picked on by other kids, and my sister tried to protect me. My parents were not given any support or counselling. Things that did just not work out. I was made a ward of the state. Foster homes. As a ward of the state, I was placed in a foster home on a farm. I thought the other kids of the family would play with me, but they didn't want to. At school, I wanted to join in the games with other kids, but they did not let me in their team. They thought I would be useless. I got into trouble at school for reading the stuff in biscuit tin, only because I was hungry. At my foster home, I worked like a slave. I didn't do all the jobs on the farm. I would get the jug cord. At night I was wet in the bed. To punish me, they made me kneel on wood pile for hours. That was torture. I ran away, but the welfare just brought me back. I ran away from the place again and again until the welfare eventually took me away. I was put into another foster home, but then I stole a chocolate bar from a shop, so I was sent back to the institution Kimberley. Institutions again. From my own experience, I know that institutions were a place of neglect and abuse. They also mean people were denied the human rights and basically denied a proper life. The right to education, the right to participate, the right to live free of violence, the right to life are all things at risk in an institution. I personally had nothing and no one. I learned that I was nobody and my life didn't really matter. Just because I was born with a disability, I was being punished for being who I was. Kimberley. I was 9 years old when I was put back in Kimberley, but this time in a different ward called Monowai. It was like the first time I was here. The conditions at Monowai were horrible. There were 40 kids in a dormitory. When you are shut away from the world, you are not treated as a real person with a life that actually matters. You were not given your own clothes. We had to share a pool of clothes and grab what we could get. We never had our own underwear. They didn't let us just be a kid. We were colour-coded into groups and we had stars and labels and categories. We all had the same bowl haircuts on the same day. We were not treated as individuals. In fact, people said we all looked the same. We were neglected. One time I had boils and it took them a whole day to notice I was sick. There was no privacy. The day room opened into a toilet block. There were no doors or partitions. There was nothing to do. Some people stayed on the floor all day, walking back and forth, especially people with the highest needs. There were so many of them, they were just stepped on the ground. If someone had had an accident and saw themselves, they were just left in their dirty clothes. You always had to eat your food fast, because if you went fast enough, your food went. They would let us do crafting. I never liked it. I would rather kick a ball around, and I used to wander around the grounds alone with a ball and a stick, and I would kick the ball up onto the roof. And I realised that if I kicked the ball on the roof, someone else would get it down. Then I became known as the problem kid. At Kimberley, I experienced abuse. I witnessed abuse. I saw staff upset people. One memory of a staff taking smokes off people. Smokes were given out for an award and taken away as punishment. If you had any possessions, they would be taken off you. I treasured my great-grandfather's watch, but it was taken away from me, and his punishment was severe and out of proportion to the behaviour. I learnt not to trust people. I learnt to survive as the best I could. I became defensive and on guard all the time, just to keep away from violence and abuse. If you were taken to Villa 5 at Kimberley, you knew you were in real trouble. The staff there were just evil. I saw this completely naked boy who had an accident being hosed down by a staff using a fire hydrant hose. He would try to stand up and be knocked over again. I've seen many terrible things, but what I saw that day has stayed with me and still frightens me. It was a warning: if you misbehave, this will happen to you. The staff would tease people. It was a mean thing for staff to do. Then some people would shout out, "Oh, get high," meaning they will get upset and do something like hurt themselves or someone else. But the staff didn't stop and would carry on teasing them, then watch the people lose control and flip out. Often this happened just before the staff went off duty. It was at Kimberley I was first sexually abused by a male staff nurse. I was so young, I did not know what was happening. People who had power over people were easily corrupted, and behind closed doors, human rights of others were often violated. This should not be allowed, but it was allowed.
Just pause you there, Robert, if Cindy could read this bit. Campbell Park. The first time I was sent to Campbell Park, I was about 11. When I got there, I was assaulted by the other boys. I got my beans, that is the initiation test. I was put into a pit where the trampoline was. They all branded me with tennis balls. There were fights there every day. After a while, I started to fight back. I would throw stones. I was then sent home again for a few years. It was not good. I didn't really know my family. People thought I was too dumb to go to secondary school. The doctors said I was upsetting my mum, so he was going to send me to a mental hospital called Lake Alice. I was about 13 years old. I was put into a villa near the front of Lake Alice with much older people. I hated it. I wanted to do crafts. They wanted me to do crafts. I found a golf club and some balls, so I hit the balls around the grounds, and then, when that got boring, I started smashing them through the windows. One day I went to the shop just outside the gates and took some comics and ice creams. Then I got moved into Villa 8, where the staff lock you up. I was locked up there for a few months. Campbell Park. One day I was transported back to Campbell Park. This time I was put into a cottage for older boys. It was different from last time. Some mean stuff went on there. I was sexually abused by the older boys there. I couldn't understand how people could be so cruel. If you got into trouble there, you had to work it off, clean windows or shift stones. If one person misbehaved, we all suffered the consequences. Someone stole money off the matron, and as our punishment, we had to march around the grounds all day.
Could I just intervene a moment to ask you to keep mindful of the stenotyper and the signers, and just speak at a pace that will enable them to keep up with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Robert, if you could continue on from paragraph 38.
Yep. Another example of what we lose in an institution is something you may all take for granted. Having a pet. Many children have a cat to cuddle and call their own. Sorry. Children in institutions do not. I adopted cats and made them my friends, but when I was moved, I lost that friend. My attachments meant nothing to others. Children raised in institutions. Learn that good times don't last, and people and pets come and go. As a result of this very negative, we struggled with how to relate to people. We were always different and somehow catching up. Nowadays, I have pets of my own, and I no longer fear I will lose my pets, my home, my friends. These are things you may take for granted, but I do not. Back to the world. When I was released from the institution at the age of 15, I had to learn to survive, and to survive all over again. I had to learn to live and survive all over again. And this was very hard to do. I realised I didn't know the things that other New Zealanders did. It was like I wasn't a citizen. There was a massive gap between me and everyone else in my community. I didn't know about the All Blacks, New Zealand's world famous rugby team, but like thousands of other boys, my greatest pleasure was kicking my rugby ball. Little did I know that my passion was matched by millions all around the world. I'd never heard of any radical music of the 60s. I didn't know about the Vietnam War, the assassinations of the Kennedys, and those things everybody else knew about. It was like I was brought up on a different planet with different rules. Once I got out of institutions, I was in the care of services. I did not like being treated like a child. I had been abused by my whole life, so I took exception being treated like a child at IHC. A lot of people with learning disabilities called staff mum and the male staff dad. There was one staff member who told me to call her mum one day, and I told her, no, you're not my mum, so she slapped my face. So I told her to F off. She kicked me, so I kicked her back. I had abused for years, and I had the guts full. I ended up by living and working on a farm which was under the umbrella of IHC. I witnessed abuse of others by staff members while I was here. There were not enough staff, and one of my best friends had a seizure and cut his head open. I saw him and helped him. I got a towel around him. Then I had to climb through another boy's window to get to the bottom unit to wake up the only staff member because the place was all locked up. My friend was never the same after that. There was just not enough staff. Another time there was a staff member and a guy with cerebral palsy who did not get on. The staff member was really cruel to that guy. so he started a fire, and the staff member got to him and they hit him and smacked him around the head so hard it really damaged him. It was shocking to witness this. Another staff member was there and just watched. He didn't do anything to stop the assault. I became active in trying to make the people with the learning disabilities have a voice within ISC. When you are taken out of your workplace on trips, the side of the buses had ISC in big letters and a stick figure on person with a star in the forehead. People would see us on the bus and they would make faces at us. It made us feel like subhuman, so we decided to protest. We made signs and protested in the street. In the end, management removed those labels from the buses. I do not want disabled people to have the same childhood I did. My hope is that there is an end to segregation, institutionalisation and discrimination. I remember the Springbok tour in New Zealand of '81 and the protest about rights and freedom for people in South Africa. I remember thinking about the rights and freedoms of all people in New Zealand locked away in institutions. I remember feeling like I hardly had any human rights. Nobody was marching for me or anyone else with a disability. My hope is that all the children of tomorrow will grow up in a caring, well-supported families and communities, and societies shift to be inclusive of all people. I believe that every person can live in a community with the right support, no ifs, no buts, no maybes. When we assist people to move from institutions into the community, we need to remember whose life it is. Don't just make decisions for people. Don't just assume you know best. Include the person in all decisions that affect their life. Long life abuse, lifelong impact of abuse and care. I often wondered why I ended up in places I did, just because I was born with a disability. I now live a proper life, but I could have had this as a child. The abuse I experienced, the abuse I saw, has had a lifelong impact on me. Even today, I get scared of people who are yelling and screaming. It makes me feel anxious. In 2016, I was appointed to the United Nations Committee on the Rights of People with Disabilities. It was an honour to have this role. I do find it challenging to meet so many people. I find it difficult to trust people, and it is hard work to socialise. I've had counselling in the past and still do. Civil claim. I've never made a civil claim. I did participate in the confidential listening and assistance service. I know other people who have made claims. I know there's a class action for some people that lived in Lakeland some years ago. Some years ago, I was told about some lawyers who I could go to, but I didn't, as I thought this would be too hard. I think it was difficult for people with disabilities to know how to make a claim. If I was going to make a claim, there'd be two main things I would claim for. The medication. At one stage when I was at Kimberley, I was given some medication that wasn't ever meant for me. Whatever it was, it had a terrible effect on me and made me lean on my side. The effect lasts for a long time. I was sent home. My family thought I was paying up, so I got into trouble. But it was the medication. I should never have endured that. The sexual abuse from a staff member at Kimberley and all those boys at Campbell Park, it should never have been allowed to happen. At that time of my life, I was displaying many signs of abuse, but nobody picked up on these signs, or if they were ignored. Nobody helped me. Instead, I was punished for the behaviour I was displaying. I would claim for those things. They should never have happened. Hopes for the future. My life in institutions meant I personally had nothing. No one to call my own. And I learnt somehow I was nobody, that my life didn't really matter. I also learnt that I was somehow actually being punished for who I was. I was one of the lucky ones. I got out. I went on to build a good life for myself. Now I have a life packed full of books, music, sports, and I have a person to call my own. My wife, Linda. Sorry. Yep. But I really had to work to create a life for myself, because I didn't know what life was actually made up of. I would see a citizen ceremony. I would like to see a citizen ceremony for all people who have been institutionalised in New Zealand. We were shut away from New Zealand society and culture, and people were shut away. When people are shut away in an institution, they don't feel like a citizen. This can even feel as bad as the abuse we experienced and witnessed. When I got out of an institution, I felt like a non-citizen. I think a citizen's ceremony is one thing the government could do for us. I also believe families are the foundation of any community, society, and play an important role. It is by being part of a family we learn about the world around us, while being provided with safety and security. Children are innocent, and it's too risky to leave it to the state to look after children. They need to be part of a family. They need love, opportunities, and individual care. We need to do a lot more to make sure that children are safe, loved and cared for, wherever they live. It is everyone's duty to make sure this happens. Disabled children should be able to join in and be part of all the things that happen in their community. They should be able to go to their own local school so they can learn from their friends in their neighbourhood and be the best they can be and enjoy life like everyone else. They should be allowed to become adults and not treated as children forever. They can be included in everything and not excluded from everything. Give families adequate support. Make families the acceptable place. Give families adequate support. Make families the only acceptable place for children to grow up. All children belong with families, and that includes all disabled children. I feel in lots of ways we have to swap large institutions for smaller ones. Residential group homes have different bricks, but the thoughts, feelings and actions of others make the place an institution. Everyone has a right to life. Said a rational way. And institutions to die. That is not a life. I strongly urge New Zealand to make the rights in the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities real. All the rights are very important, but I want to highlight Article 19, which talks about disabled people have the right to choose where they live and with whom. I want disabled people to live a life they choose, free from violence and abuse. Violence and abuse is not okay. We already have a campaign in New Zealand, but we need to make sure that all New Zealanders, that means disabled people too. My dream is that all disabled people have their rights and are treated as citizens of New Zealand. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. I'll now hand over to the Chair.
Thank you, Ms Thomas. I first of all wish to ask, does any council wish to ask Mr Martin questions? No. So far as the commissioners are concerned, any questions will begin with questions from Commissioner Paul Gibson.
Kia ora, Robert, thanks for the power and the emotion of your story, and I'll acknowledge you and a couple of other acknowledgements first, that we have a strong lineup of witnesses from Aotearoa New Zealand, but I know the global mana, the esteem which you bring and held at the UN, it's almost unique, and acknowledging things like a nomination for a Nobel Peace Prize. And your story, though it's uniquely yours, is a story of thousands of people in Aotearoa New Zealand and millions of people around the world, and you know, you're a hero to many of us to bring that out. Also acknowledging Paula, thank you for your powerful introduction as well, and the strength that it gives to the rights that Robert talks about, and acknowledging today being Parihaka Day and the role of the Tararakihi, the children, in that invasion and the impact on them as well. The title of the Human Rights Commission, Donald Beasley Institute Research, Institutions are Places of Abuse. What makes you say that institutions are places of abuse?
Yes, I believe they are places of abuse. I've experienced it. I've seen it in my others. Institutions are often away from towns and cities, out of sight, out of mind. So things happen to people and no one notices what's going on. They are virtually a law unto themselves. Anything and everything could go on, and usually did. And I've travelled around the world and seen lots of institutions where people with learning disabilities, still are. And institutions are the same around the world. If you've been in one, you've been in them all.
Do you feel that institutions are gone in New Zealand?
No, I'd have to say no, really, because we might have closed the big ones, but we still have institutionalisation as such. Institutions are not just about bricks and mortar. It's the thoughts and feelings that make institutions. And I've said this statement many times at the UN, and it's still just as prevalent as it was way back in the dark old days to what it is today. And people don't have choices where or with whom they live. If you go out, all go out together. So that to me is still a form of institutionalisation. No one is allowed to be an individual. And that's what we all are. We're all unique. We all bring different things to this world we live in.
How do you view group homes?
Well, to me, group homes are like mini institutions. They're not quite as bad, but there needs to be big changes in the future. Services take away people's choices and control and are still institutions. Services that support people rather than individuals are still institutions. I believe we need to look at making the rights real in Article 19 of the CRPD real. Things like being able to choose where and with whom we live with, being able to choose if we want to go out or not having to go out altogether all the time. We need to really start listening to disabled people, including people with learning disability, about what they want and how they want to live their lives.
Did you see bullying in services?
Yes, as I read out in my statement, yes, I did see bullying in many ways in institutions and services.
And
I lived in that and I saw, and it was not good. I thought, how could this be happening to my friends? And it was some of the most abusive things I've ever seen.
And did you organise a strike?
Yes, I helped organise a strike when I was part of services and worked on a farm. The services ran in Wanganui. It wasn't a real job, and we didn't get any pay or holidays. We had to work hard. My friend, a person with a learning disability, wasn't getting a fair deal. He asked me what we could do. I said we could have a strike.
Did you observe abuse and neglect happening to others?
Yes, I did. And again, I thought, how could this be happening? The way other people treated human beings like this. You know, I just thought it was terrible that how could other people with power and control treat people like this. But, I mean, like I said before, institutions were, you know, out of sight, out of mind, and, you know, people didn't come in to make sure that these things weren't going on. And, you know, I know Kimberley in the 60s was a place that I'd have to say that the powers that be thought it was a really great place. Well, the thing is, it might have been a great place from their perspective, but when you actually have to endure what we endured, it was not a great place. And what I saw happen to people with the most highest needs is just terrible. I mean, it was just shocking to see other human beings treat other human beings in this way.
When we talk about abuse and neglect, how common was it?
Well, I saw this every day. It was common in institutions to see many forms of abuse. Some staff would tease people and then go woof. And I'm sure they were laughing from one side of their face to the other. And, you know, when the replacement staff came on, they would have to deal with the situation in front of them. The neglect was everywhere. For example, people who had toileting accidents were left and not cleaned up, being sick and not being noticed. People being left to walk on the chair and bang their heads on the wall, and for so long they made holes in the walls. I did not understand how people could be so cruel. Staff would use smokes as an award and punishment. In services, I did see a bit, but not as much. It was much more subtle. For example, staff going into people's rooms and taking their positions, talking to people in a real derogatory way. We had to treat staff with dignity and respect, but they did not treat us in this way.
And finally, what can we do to keep people safe?
Well, this is a big question now. I think there are lots of things, and they all need to happen together to stop abuse. First thing, implement the rights in the CRPD. More individualisation in services. Let people decide how they want to live. More options for things to do during the day where people can live. I think people need to have choice of who they live with and choose the staff. More independent monitoring of services. More advocacy for people who do not speak. Or more advocacy for when people do speak up. Having the opportunities to do more things in their community and having more people in their lives. Having friends visit. Teach people about violence and abuse and what to do if it happens to them. For example, I know that People First, the disabled persons organisation I'm a life member of, has a course called Keeping Safe, Feeling Safe. This course is written for people with learning disabilities to learn about violence and abuse and what to do if it happens to them. But we have no money to deliver the course. And of course we know we have this in New Zealand, you know, for families, and I think we need to include people with disabilities as well, because it does happen to people with disabilities. Make sure the helping services includes the police are trained and accessible for people with disabilities. End segregation instead of being invisible, become visible.
Thanks, Robert. It's been a privilege. We'll take the lessons from today and the lessons from your book and perhaps some further questions in future, somehow tapping into your UN expert experience as well. Kia ora, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lofiwhai.
Thank you. No questions from me, Robert, just to say, to echo the thoughts of Commissioner Gibson, it's been a real honour and a privilege to hear your story this morning, and all power to you as you continue at the highest levels globally to keep bringing light to the issues in the disability community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Judge Shaw.
Just to offer my sincere thanks for the work you've done, and I think we can all sense the cost that this giving evidence has been to you today, and it has not gone unnoticed. And so very real thanks for putting in that hard work and enduring this public spectacle. It will not go wasted. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Erueti.
Kei te mihi atu ki a koe. E te rangatira, thank you for your evidence today. Compelling, much appreciated. Kia ora.
For myself, Mr. Martin, I echo the words of my colleagues. Thank you for your evidence for the Royal Commission. It is a treasure for us to have your testimony and your insights. Thank you.